Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by JP Mason, as always on a Thursday, JP, but it's even better when you're winning games and there's an air of positivity, as there seems to be at this moment in time, so much so that even last night, when the second half performance was much different from the first, I didn't feel any kind of negativity surrounding that last night after the game. And by the way, you're commenting on the game straight after the final whistle, so sometimes the emotions are high. But I didn't have that sense of disappointment last night. I just felt, and I think Ange spoke about it after the game, there was a resilience, there was a character there in that Celtic side last night.
Absolutely, dug in when it needed to be done. Like, I mean, it was first half even I was getting, caught up in the hysteria of the moment, like, I know I was kind of trying to downplay Hatate last week, but Hatate didn't score a goal last week. He scored the goal last night, and what a goal it was. When he started running towards it, there was a gap in front of him, and I said to the guy next to him, I was like, keep going, just keep going. And then he just went, nah, I'm just going to hit it for here and make a name for myself. I mean, he already had, but I mean, yeah, he was outstanding in the first half. I said that he wasn't outstanding, but he was outstanding last night.
You brought him up. We'll talk about him, but I think it's quite difficult, JP, right? Because the big thing is, and this is something I think everybody realises, we're all hugely passionate Celtic supporters. We're commenting on the games as you see them. It's your opinion. There's never an agenda to try and pinpoint certain players to give them a hard time. I would love every player to do well for Celtic. And this season, Acsom contributors have spoken about the fact that they didn't think Ralston was up to the task in the early days. They didn't think that Mikey Johnston...
Including me.
Yeah. And that's what happens. But then they play games, they prove you wrong, and you love the fact that they're proving you wrong, because if they're proving you wrong, it means they're playing well. And if they're playing well, then we're getting results. So we'll start off with Reo Hatate, because obviously I've used him as the strapline on today's show. Hugely impressed by both his performances, but last night with that goal. And I thought to myself, I got a lot of stick for comparing Jota to Ginola. Maybe I shouldn't mention Nakamura when I look at that goal, but it's hard not to. And I seen someone on the Twitter, someone with far more technical nous than I, has done the split screen of Naka scoring against Rangers on the top and last night's Hatate goal. There's always going to be these similarities. Of course there is, right? Both coming from Japan, but that was Naka-esque, the way he struck the ball, JP. And I mean, it was continuing to go when it hit the net.
Yeah, it was. Have you seen the Celtic TV angle from behind the goal?
No, yet actually. No, I haven't yet.
There's a shot of that, and the noise that it makes when it hits the net is obviously because it was quite quiet. I guess there wasn't exactly a lot of singing going on at that time because we were all over them, and the home crowd were muted to say the least. So it's quite quiet. So you just hear like this sort of a great sort of ping. It's almost like a bell hitting. As I don't know what hit what's making the noise, and then someone like batters it back into the net after it comes back out. So you get a second noise as well, and you can just see Craig Gordon's face kind of, oh dear, didn't enjoy that one. I mean, not many goalkeepers would enjoy getting a goal like that scored into them, but yeah, it was special. It was great to. I'm glad I was there. I got a very late shout for a ticket at 4:30, and I was on a train about 15 minutes later. £27 for the train, by the way. That's absolutely insane. Like, I was speaking to somebody who said they know somebody that's going to Lanzarote at the weekend for $15.99. So like,
dearie me.
How does that figure in terms of comparison? But no, it was worth every penny, and it was good to be. I hadn't been at Tynecastle since August 2018. I guess what with COVID and everything else, and this season not having fans in the first game, there's not been a great deal of opportunities to go there, and it's always hard to get a ticket. So I was very grateful to have one last night, and be there to see the team, just to see the team play, in real time, and it's not on the TV and you're not missing things. I mean, I saw people criticising Starfelt last night, again, I can't believe the criticism that's getting labelled at him. It's really, he completely divides. Not divides, what I'd say there's probably about 70-30 in favour of him, but there's 30% of support that have just completely, gone off piece with him and just don't seem to give him any inch. It's weird.
The thing with that is, I mean, Starfelt has been criticised on this show this season. And I've thought long and hard about what happens when you go deep on a player in terms of I don't rate him, right? And then he starts to prove you wrong. At what point does that person say, oh well, actually, it just didn't look good? Or does their perception remain skewed because they've made that commitment to say, I don't think he's very good? And we've seen a wee bit of that around some of the players in the team. And people have a perception of Tony Ralston and it stays. But then he has another tremendous performance. Then he scores another brilliant goal. And then you think, well, come on, you've got to turn it. The guy's he's actually a good member of our squad. Starfelt, my relationship with him is that, at the time, the last time we played at Tynecastle, he's thrown into that game. You're so disappointed after it. I'd need to watch back the post-match, but I mean, the sense of disappointment, you maybe are looking at the fact he wasn't great that night, but then you look at the circumstances surrounding him making his debut, JP, the fact that he's thrown into that, there's a period of isolation, he barely knows his teammates, and it's a tough, as last night showed, it's a tough gig anyway, going to Tynecastle. First game of the season, so much change within the squad. So you look at that and you think, right, okay, so that was the starting point for Starfelt. Then there were a few poor performances, absolutely, in that early part of his Celtic career. But what I felt when he came back from his injury was that he started to develop a good partnership with Cameron Carter-Vickers. He then probably had a couple of returns to the poor form of his early Celtic career, and it just so happened that he didn't have a great game in the cup final. I don't think he had a great game in the cup final. But when I'm looking at last night, for example, so I guess I was on the fence, I would say, with Starfelt. I don't think I was overcritical with him. I would say I was on the fence with him. But before the game last night, we were talking about the fact that the back four was the best back four we have at this moment in time at the club. And I think most Celtic fans would agree. Some might say they would rather have Stephen Welsh in there at centre-half. I mean, what other players might have a shout? Julien? Yeah, we don't know what Julien we're getting at this moment in time.
Skills would have a shout for me. At left back.
At left back. Well, Taylor, again, he's another one who comes into this category, the OJP, that people have made their mind up about him. And it's going to be hard to turn that in. And by the way, as a football fan, that's your right to have that opinion and that view on a player. But I think Starfelt definitely turned my opinion round. Last night, when I'm looking at the Hearts goal, any goal against Celtic, the first thing I'm doing is, right, who's to blame? Who's responsible for that? And if it was the Hatate goal, you'd be struggling to find any Hearts player to blame because, I mean, some people might say, well, it went through Gordon's hands. You tell me he was going to stop that? Absolutely not.
He made the space for himself as well. You see him chop inside and makes the space. So there's not really a lot of finger pointing on there at the Hearts defence.
No.
As you say, and the Hearts goal, I haven't actually seen the Hearts goal back. Apparently it was offside. I don't know if that was a cut and dried or whatever, but apparently it was offside. But I don't know if was anybody to blame for the Hearts goal.
If you're being harsh and you analyse it to the nth degree, you might say, well, Starfelt should have gone for the header. But then you're thinking, well, is that because you've already got this perception of the fact that he's maybe not up to scratch? Probably. And then when Mackay gets the ball, Mackay's clearly Hearts' best player by some distance, I would say. He gets the ball and he's given too much room. He's not closed down quickly enough. But, I mean, there's no error within that passage of play, JP, so you really are going to the nth degree to find fault in it. And looking at the offside, I've seen it a dozen times this morning. It was offside. It was. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And people may say that's because you're a Celtic fan that you're saying that. I don't think Giakoumakis was offside, incidentally. It's not as cut and dry.
I've seen that. I've seen that goal, and I don't think that's offside. I think if that got flagged offside, I think the game's gone. If that's getting flagged offside, because he's basically side by side with the player.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you want to be nitpicking about it, you would say, well, if it went to VAR, would they draw the line and would his foot or his toe be offside or anything like that? But we've not got VAR at the moment, so we're still going by the linesman's naked eye. And So I just think that's a hell of a call to make if you say that's offside.
Absolutely agree with that.
From that ball.
And by the way, I don't want anybody thinking I'm giving Starfelt a hard time. I thought Starfelt was very good last night. I'm not blaming him for the goal. It's just that when you're analysing the game, you're trying to pinpoint where could we have stopped that. Sometimes it's at source that you've got to stop the cross from coming in the first place. I thought we were poor at not winning the header. I think there was hesitation there. But again, that's not just Starfelt. Carter Vickers is in the mix there as well. And then when Mackay gets the ball, he's not closed down quickly enough. But I don't think it's an individual issue. I'm at this moment in time, as I sit here, I'm pretty confident with Starfelt and Carter Vickers going into the next 2 games. I would say that much. I don't know when Julien's going to start making progress. I don't know when he's going to come in for 10, 15 minutes here and there, but I'm pretty sure it'll be a gradual process, JP. But we started talking about Reo Hatate, and, like everyone else, you're doing as much research as you possibly can on all these new signings that are coming in from leagues that are fairly untapped. I mean, we've not had Japanese players at the club since Nakamura and Mizuno, so I don't know a great deal about Japanese football until Postecoglou comes in and then Kyogo comes in, and then you keep an eye on it. So I'm finding it dead interesting that at 24 years of age, and he's just turned 24, he had 77 games under his belt when he came to Celtic, senior games in Japanese football, and we managed to pick him up. And the transfer market's quite accurate when it comes to transfer fees. A lot of the other ones are they're estimates, but between 1.38 and 1.5 million pounds for this guy. Now, the first question is, how on earth did you pick him up for that fee? Because we are terrible, JP, at throwing money at players. Sometimes panic buys. £2.5 million. I've lost count of the amount of players that were spent £2.5 or £3.5 million on. And it's a punt. It's a punt. It's almost as if the club says, well, if it doesn't work out, it's £3 million. We might get 800 grand back and, nothing's lost because someone else has been sold for a profit. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that pound for pound, that I had gone on record as saying Joe Hart's been our best signing of the season. But I tell you what, Reo Hatate is up there, isn't he, for that price?
I mean, on the basis of what I've seen so far, which is 60 minutes last week against Hibs at home, and conversely going to Tynecastle, you're dealing with a lot more factors at Tynecastle than you are in the comfort of a home game at Celtic Park with 95% of the stadium being in your favour. Last night it was the usual hostility at Tynecastle that you got from the stands and also the team as well. I'm not saying Hearts were doing an aloe on Saturday or anything like that, but they certainly were not just trying to play pretty football. They were getting right in the players' faces. They weren't giving people time. But when you're as good a football player as Reo Hatate seems to be, you make the space, you get away from players, and he was doing it time and time again, as was O'Reilly, as was Jota. And you're just looking around the team and there's like, wow, you've got this guy, you've got this guy, you've got this guy. And I usually, when I'm at a game, if I think back when I'm on the way home or whatever, and I think back to how many times I said brilliant Starfelt or brilliant Beaton, and I said that quite a few times last night about both of those players. And that's not even taken. That was the sort of dirty work almost, the sort of being tidy in midfield, Beaton breaking up play, being available for a pass, and obviously Starfelt putting tackles in or just last minute blocks or whatever, or being aware of danger. And but then you've got the flair players as well. Some of the things that they were doing. I mean, O'Reilly looked. I mean, as well as Hatate, O'Reilly, that was his first game for Celtic, and you hear his interview afterwards, and he's going, "It's crazy, like I'm used to playing League One, and all of a sudden I'm in this mad cauldron of a stadium where everybody hates this club, and that you could probably feel the hate from Hearts towards Celtic, the supporters and the players. You can feel it, and you, as a player, you're completely exposed to it. It's coming at you from all four corners of the stadium, and he's trying to concentrate on playing football whilst dealing with that atmosphere. And it's. I started thinking about it from a different perspective last night, because people have made debuts and things like that, and you go, oh, well, they're a footballer or whatever. But then when you actually think about the the mentality of where he's been and where he's come to in such a very, very short space of time. And he dealt with it. He dealt with it really well. Obviously, you saw him go down with, I think, cramp at the end, and the home crowd let him know all about it. You know, but I mean, it's, you know, I don't think he was acting or anything like that. I think it was he'd been running around solid for, you know, 80 minutes, 85 minutes. So he'd done well. I don't think he'd not played for a good few weeks either. It's not as if he just had a game last Saturday or something like that. He'd not played for a while. So no, fair play to him. And but yeah, Hatate, to get that sort of player for that level of money. I mean, I said last week we've been labelled big spending Celtic. You know, I really, you know, I would sort of accept that if we were, you know, flinging money around. But I mean, I don't think you could say spending 5-6 million on all those players that we've got is, in respect to Celtic and their finances, is not big spending. You know, it's not flashing the cash. It's not being like, oh well, look at us, we've got all this money. It's just like, it's being prudent, and it's actually finally we're signing players that look like they're the real deal. You know, for the money. You know, like you say, we've wasted so much money and seen so many players come through the doors that haven't contributed at all and left with many zeros added to their bank balance. I don't mind if Matt O'Reilly leaves with zeros added to his bank balance in a couple of years' time, because in that time he will have done well for Celtic. and that's probably the advice he's been given by agents and other people in the game. Probably spoke to Dembele or whatever. I mean, the Dembele thing, he's same pathway, Fulham, Academy, you know, and look what Dembele's done. You know, gone on to be successful at Lyon. I think he's Dembele's goal tally at Lyon's actually really decent. I saw it shared recently, and it's actually better than I thought. So, yeah, it's refreshing times. Not just winning games, but the signing quality that we're bringing in is a lot more heartening.
No, definitely. I mean, Dembele's gone on to win a Spanish title, you know, and as you say, he's doing well for Lyon, and he's a shining example of what can happen when you come to a club like Celtic. And yes, they use us as a stepping stone. I know that, but that comes with a risk, because there's no guarantee that they're going to be a success. And if they're not, then they fall into obscurity like the dozens of players that we've mentioned. But when I'm looking at the transfer fees, JP, I find it astonishing that we've spent €2 million on Hatate, €2 million on Maeda. That's the agreed fee. He's on loan, so I've not even spent that money. There'll be a loan fee, I'm guessing, and 1 million on Ideguchi, then 1.5 on Matt Ryan. This is 1990s kind of transfer fees we're talking about here. You know what I mean? And people sometimes say to me, well, with regards to the money, you spend the money, it's not your money, but you know, if you've not got 56,000 or 52,000 season ticket holders, you don't have that. I mean, that's your biggest income stream. We don't have the TV revenue. So I think we do need to be more prudent. And I know that we're a global brand and we sell merchandise all over the world. But in terms of season ticket holders, it is the season ticket money that makes Celtic a force in that respect. And the minute you take that away, there would be an issue. And I do want the club to spend the money more wisely. I also take into account that football moves on, and, you know, £4.5 million we spent on Starfelt, 4.5 on Kyogo. There are going to be investments of that type. But when you're picking those guys up and then throw £1.4 million into the mix for Hart, I just think your transfer business has been tremendous. And long may that continue as well. We'll come back to a wee bit of the transfers, because I'm pretty sure there's certainly going to be a few more bodies out the building. There might be more coming in. But you mentioned Matt O'Reilly there. Oh, by the way, what came to my mind when you were talking about Tynecastle, and again, you know, having never been on the park, but sampling the atmosphere from the stands. A lot of players that leave Scottish football who are asked about atmospheres in Scottish football mention Tynecastle as well. So I think it is definitely palpable on the park. And Matt O'Reilly comes in, thrown in, because let's be honest, we've got no other choice due to the injuries and also the international duty. So he's thrown in. And I was having a wee look again at his career. 21-year-old decided to leave Fulham for first-team football, went away and proved that he was a player. He's come in for around £1.5 million. He was given the man of the match last night. And I think that one of my fears going into the game last night was the fact that we were throwing a midfield together that had never played together in Beaton, Hatate and O'Reilly. I'm now looking at them and I'm looking ahead to Dundee United and Rangers, feeling a wee bit more confident after last night, JP.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a bit of a whitey. I mean, genuinely, if you were to ask me who man of the match was, I would have said Near Beaton. And you know, my feelings on Near Beaton, I've not been his biggest fan over the course, mainly because he's been at Celtic for so long and hasn't contributed fully. You know, he's been there or thereabouts. He's got what's happening Beaton with Tierney. You know, I mean, a bit of banter on a 5-second video isn't going to make me, convinced about a football player. Do you know what I mean? I want to see the guy contribute and do the business on the park, and he did it last night. And the idea of a testimonial was made by us a while ago, and I was kind of saying, who would go to a Near Beaton testimonial now when he's contributing in a season as important as this? Because I would argue that last season and this season are not far away in being in comparable terms. I know that there was the sort of the glory of 10 in a row and everything else, but this season to win it back, given what we've done before that, is almost as important. And Near Beaton, if he contributes to this season, which he already has significantly, I would argue, Mitchell and apart, then he's on his way to, potentially having a testimonial and having, as close to a full house as possible. I mean, I'm reaching further for a ticket at this stage than I would have been, 6 months ago or 9 months ago. But yeah, O'Reilly, I think I don't know if he was man of the match. I don't want to get too over the top, just like I didn't want to about Hatate. I'll rein it in because one, he didn't score. He made a few poor choices when he was in the final third. I mean, he ballooned a shot off the bar, tame shot into Gordon, if I remember, one where he got right in on goal, and it was just like it was a weak shot. But there was enough there for me to be optimistic. And if I hold back on the praise, that means that he'll score in the next game. So that means if he plays on Saturday, he'll score on Saturday. And then hopefully he keeps one in his locker for Wednesday as well. But I think, I enjoyed watching him play. And there's something about him. The guy next to me said that he reminded him of Ledley a bit. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not. I mean, I maybe saw that a bit. It was also a bit of Stuart Armstrong about him as well. Kind of bustling, busy attacking midfielder, but really, really good close control on the ball as well. Like he got himself in tight spaces a few times, which was impressive. And he just looks to fit into the system. Like I'm not a football expert. I'm a football fan, and I say what I see. And last night I saw a guy enjoy a game of football and fit into a system without too much effort. So you wonder what he'll be like in a couple of months' time or something like that, when he actually does have a relationship and a bonding with the people around about him in his immediate position and further as well, because once you get that trust, I mean, he'll have got a lot of the players' trust last night from that performance, because they might have been thinking, what's this guy all about? What can he do? And then he comes in and puts in a shift and shows he's a bit of a player, and that gives the rest of the team confidence as well, because they know, well, if we give the ball to him, then there's a good chance something's going to come of it. I mean, was it not his ball out wide that led to the? Yeah. No. Was it?
Led to the cross for Giakoumakis, yeah.
He hit that pass. I was like, whoa, that's 100% accurate with the right amount of pace in it, and it completely destroyed the Hearts' defence. Like you wiped them all out, and then all the I can't remember who crossed it. It's terrible, but
Jamesy, was it Jamesy?
James Forrest. Well, all James Forrest had to do was put it into the right place, and we got the goal from it. So I think and as a contributing factor, he assisted. What's this new stat when you do an assist before an assist?
Well, it was actually O'Reilly who gets the assist for Giakoumakis, so it was O'Reilly's pinpoint accuracy with his ball.
Was it?
Yeah. But what I was going to say on that point, though, was the intensity of his passing. So he's getting the ball and he's releasing it like at that pace that is suited to Angie's style. And I think that if you look at last season compared to last season, in terms of the players that were brought in, JP, it was quite obvious last year that there were players who didn't suit our style. And that's, one of the biggest issues. That's why when you bring in somebody like Shane Duffy and your team requires your centre-half to have a lot of the ball at their feet, to have very, very good distribution, a range of distribution, X, Y, and Z in terms of that criteria, and you bring in a player like Shane Duffy who doesn't have that, then it's not going to work. And that's been proved by him going back to a side where their style of play does suit him and he performs. I think the same could possibly be said about Albion Ayeti, possibly about Diego Laxalt. Remember him? A player who, obviously, we all know the pedigree, AC Milan, World Cup, team of the tournament for Uruguay, etc. He comes into Celtic and he looks extremely ordinary. And it could often be the fact that we're buying players who don't suit the style. I think a lot of the signing would be a lot more data-led this season. It looks like that, JP. There's Matt O'Reilly. Let's have a look at his stats. Let's have a look at the data. Will he fit this high-tempo passing style? Yes, he does. Bring him in and he suits and he clicks right into place. And I think we're seeing that this season. But I didn't want to take his assist away from him, because it was a tremendous pass. But that's what, I was impressed by last night. Now, you've mentioned Nir Beaton. Before we start talking about him, let's get some of the comments coming, because it is his 9th season, Nir Beaton. It's incredible. 9th season at Celtic. Stephen Sloan, you're the first to comment on today's show. Welcome to the show. You're on YouTube. I know I'm being greedy, and I know we're on a great run lately, but I am still worried about our second half performances. We're playing Rangers next week, and we cannot turn up for just 45. I want to talk about that. Jungle Lion, welcome to the show. Jungle Lion, long-time watcher of a Celtic State of Mind. Great 3 points, great first half. Tired a bit in the second half. Need another Jota-type player on the other flank. And Scott Howe comes in also to say it's a concern that the performance is dropping in the second half. I'm sure Ange will sort it out. We talked about this last night. See what you think of this, JP, right? So Laura Bryan and I were speaking about the fact that, right, so Ange has come in and it's a different intensity that we're playing. And there's been comparisons made, not to the manager, not to the teams, but to the approach of Jurgen Klopp when he came in to Liverpool, and the amount of injuries and the muscle strains that happened within the first half of his first season. But it did settle down once the players started to adapt and their bodies started to adapt to the training. Now, I think that's a massive part of the issue here. So you've got guys who, O'Reilly, professional footballer, and he's cramping up in his first game, probably because it's the biggest shift he's had in his football career, and it's because he's playing Angie's style. Anybody that gets cramp at 2 or 3 in the morning, which is normally when I get it, will know that you can't walk off up at football park immediately, because he was getting a hard time with Robbie Nielsen. And you're thinking, mate, you played the game. You know that if somebody's got cramp, they're not moving. They're going to have to get carried off. But when you're looking at the intensity, so we've never had the luxury, JP, of having 11 players on that park who either aren't coming back from some kind of injury or haven't had time to adapt to Angie's pace and tempo. So you've got players last night getting thrown into the team. So I think that is why maybe we've seen a bit of a drop-off. And to the argument that says, well, by this time of the season, maybe we should have got the squad up. We've never had a settled squad because we've had new guys coming in, new signings, and we've had people coming back from injury. Even last night, Jota's coming back from injury. Giakoumakis is trying to get match fit. Taylor isn't long back from injury. Forrest is coming back from. So you've got 3 or 4 players every single week playing who aren't yet back up to the intensity. And then you're bringing in new signings, quite a lot. We're on 18 now this season. There is going to come a point, I think, and I hope there's going to come a point where they're all at that same level and it's not going to drop off. And even if it starts to drop off, you can look to the bench. Last night, we had some good options to see the game out, McCarthy and Sorrow. We didn't have the attacking options that we are going to have when some of these guys come back. So I think and hope that is the reason for the drop-off.
Also, it's only the second game back since the break. So we had played since 22nd of December. Was that the last game, the St Mirren game?
Boxing Day.
Boxing Day, yeah. But Boxing Day was a shadow side because of COVID and everything else. So a lot of those players maybe hadn't played since the St Mirren game because if you remember the side that was put out against St Johnstone, it wasn't really recognisable as a Celtic first 11, in terms of the strength. So yeah, I mean, it's only the second game back. The intensity last night that they put in the first half, was probably asking more of them than you would maybe expect at this stage, as they're trying to get their gears going again. You saw people tiring in the second half, but everybody still looked up for it. Nobody was like throwing the towel. I'll admit it. 2-1, I was kind of like, oh god. Obviously they got the penalty, and you're thinking, right, 2 each, and then guy next to me was like, they'll go and win this now, and I was like, come on, that's no, I'm not having that. But the shot goes in off the inside of the post, and you're thinking, right, well, we've got to see this out now. We can't. We've been weathering a bit of a storm here, but we can't allow them to get an equaliser. They've had their chance, they blew it, and that was it. So, I thought, and I don't know if this has just been me being sort of overly complimentary, but I didn't think James Forrest had as bad a game as people made out online last night. I saw a lot of folks saying, "Oh, James Forrest isn't the answer," and everything else, but he wasn't amazing. But I think he did a job. And at the end of the day, we walked out of Tynecastle last night with 3 points, and we won 2-1. And every player on that park contributed to that victory. That's how I see it.
I didn't see any glaringly bad performances. I really didn't. I
mean, even James McCarthy, when he came on, I mean, he did a couple of brilliant things. I think one of them was like he went right in on a meaty tackle near the dugout, and he won the ball. And then he went to play a pass, just played it completely out of the park. I don't know if he just got so G'd up by the fact that he won the ball, he forgot actually, now I need to actually play a decent pass, and he played it right out of the park. But he did the business in getting the ball in the first place and stopping a Hearts attack. He did look worryingly, short of pace. He's got no pace, McCarthy, at all.
This is the thing. That's the anomaly, though, that contradicts what I've just been saying there, JP, where it looks as though we're using data far more when it comes to the suitability of certain players. Because I agree with you, I don't think McCarthy looks like the style of player. And I said the same after the Alloa game about Giakoumakis, and obviously I got loads of stick for that, which is fine, absolutely fine, because as I said before, if you get it wrong about a player, that's because they're doing well, and Celtic are doing well. So more than happy.
He was brilliant last night, and again, I was talking to Guy last night before the game, and we were talking about the Alloa game, and you're like, people forget that under Brendan Rodgers, we played Alloa at Celtic Park and won 2-0.
Yeah.
And Rodgers said that was the best Scottish team that had played at Celtic Park this season. We only won 2-0 at home. But people, I don't know why Saturday was just like, everyone's straight 5-6-0, and we got through. It wasn't pleasant. It was on a horrible pitch. It was the first game back after the break. We were 2-0. We were comfortable. Yeah, they got a goal. Big deal. What does that goal do for them now? Nothing. They're not in the next round of the cup. We got 3 players taken off injured, which disrupted the team. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a game for the ages. There's no way that that's going to be remembered fondly. But Giakoumakis scored, took his goal well. But last night he showed what he showed against Ferencváros last night. He showed that he can rough it up. He looked like he didn't want to get beat. And I've said this before. The more players that you see on that pitch that don't want to get beat and give that impression, then the better a team we will be, because you've got guys like Cameron Carter-Vickers now who you can tell he doesn't want to get beat in a game. Like, will not be given any quarter in a game. And, he obviously got a bit of a rough time last night at times, and it maybe wasn't as good as he normally is, but he certainly didn't lack determination. And I thought he was great too. But Giakoumakis, pleased for him, because we know the whole striker's curse at Celtic. He's wearing the number 7 jersey as well, which is a heavy jersey to wear at Celtic for a number of reasons. And I've always been a bit reticent for that to be given to anybody unless they're I don't know. I don't even know who would deserve to get that jersey off the bat. I don't think it was maybe thought about when they gave Giakoumakis the jersey, I think it was just a case of, right, well, it's a first team squad number. There you go. But we all, value it a lot more maybe than the person that dishes out the numbers at Celtic. And I don't know if he chose it himself. If he did, then fair play to him for choosing it. But, it's great to see a player. I watched his interview this morning, and, he said, normally players say it was a big goal for the team or whatever. But first of all, he said, it was a big goal for me. I wanted to score in a big game, and I've done it. And probably that's, helped his mentality, and his, just to think, well, I'm not just scoring against wee teams here. That was a big game last night. That was the team that's third in the league and their ground, and I've scored a pretty great goal, actually. It's not, it wasn't a 30-yard screamer, but it was pretty good innovation to, be able to adjust his feet at the very last second. That ball was fizzed in fast. I mean, that wasn't an easy goal to take at all.
And it does it with both feet off the ground as well, JP. It was an excellent finish. Maybe they take him round the number 7 lounge and you see all the names on the wall: Chiefche, Janino, Bloomberg, and you go, I fancy it. I can do better than him. Perhaps. Thanks everybody for getting involved here. Over 1,000 watching live, which is tremendous. And I love it when people remind me that I got it wrong. That's absolutely fine. It's out there. I'm not going to delete it. It's like all my bad tweets. They're out there. They're not offensive, so they're maybe just bad takes. Danielle F, welcome back. Afternoon. Where's all the Starfelt haters now? Guy was incredible last night. I tell you,
still there. There's still loads of them because, like, honestly, a cursory glance at Twitter last night. If Danielle is looking for Starfelt haters, she'll find them on the internet. I'm telling you that for sure. But I'm not some flag waving guy or whatever. Like going, oh well, I'll go to the edge for Starfelt or anything like that. I just say it how I see it as a fan, and I thought he was great last night. I really, really did, and I'm not just doing it to sort of bum him up because people have been slagging him or anything like that. It's like, if he has a good game, you say it,
And of course, you just got to look at a defensive record, JP. And I think that one of the biggest issues, last season was the fact that we didn't have that settled back to and the goalie behind them. Even when we drew at Kilmarnock prior to all the issues that Chris Julian eventually had that season, people were calling for a centre half when Shane Duffy came in because Ayer and Julian didn't look the part as a partnership. And we had all the issues with the goalies. We don't have that same issue just now. So yeah, we might criticise certain players in certain games. There's some comments coming in here actually on your point about Scales, where they're saying Greg Taylor still isn't shown enough. So there's always going to be elements where you think, right, we need an upgrade here and there. But on the point in near Beaton, he comes in last night. I mean, he's a strange one in terms of the squad because, as we were saying before, 9 seasons now. This is his 9th season as a Celt, and only twice has he made more than 40 appearances. So there have been seasons where he's been a bit part player, making 20-odd appearances, JP, 10 appearances on one occasion. But he's the type of player that, when you've got a full complement of players, he might not get a game. He might be on the bench. But then other times he starts and he captains the side. So it's like two ends of the scale. Season started off really poorly with the sending off against Midtjylland. I think Ange's realised pretty quickly, right, this guy's not playing centre half. He's not a centre half. And he's played effectively.
Everybody else had thought the same thing, but that's down to poor recruitment, isn't it? I mean, if he can come in and tell within, a couple of games, this guy's not a centre half, why the hell has anybody been playing him at centre half? Go out and sign one. Don't play midfielders at centre half. It's oh god. Anyway,
I know
we could talk that through for quite some time, I'm sure, and it wouldn't be a very enjoyable watch or indeed to contribute to.
The thing is, JP, he played centre half so many times for several managers, to the point where Kevin Graham one time on the podcast says to me, right, Paul, stop saying it. He's not an adapted centre half. He's just a centre half because that's where everybody plays him. So thankfully, Ange came in and realised, actually, big man, no, I'm going to put you here. I'm going to deploy you here. But even there was one moment last night where he's tried to burn their left back for pace. And he's hit it right, and he's eventually won the corner. And it's just pure experience. Hit it into, in behind the defence, and he's won a corner. And I'm thinking to myself, it's one of the most complete performances I've seen for this guy, and all that was missing was his long range efforts that he used to be kind of known for from time to time. But I just think, in terms of a captain's performance last night, very, very composed. He's on his way to maybe having his best campaign at Celtic. I'll stand corrected if someone can tell me that he's played better previously. But we're going into the game against Rangers. I'm not skipping a Dundee United game here, but we're going into a game against Rangers where I think he's going to be pivotal, especially when you look at the lack of Celtic experience around about him with O'Reilly and Hatate. And I don't think at the beginning of the season I would have been happy with that. I don't think in January last season, where he's got sent off at Ibrox, that if you told me, fast forward a year, you're going in, he's your captain, and you're actually quite happy that he's your captain. You're not happy that McGregor's not playing, of course you're not. But going into, I don't really have much concerns now about the midfield. Going back to that point, are you quite happy with Beaton leading the side out against Rangers?
I never thought I would be. I might have been on the post-match bulletin last January after that game at Ibrox, and I was absolutely livid with the guy because it was just daft. But I mean, he was playing out of position. He wasn't playing where he's comfortable in. He got rolled on the halfway line, and his only option in his head was panic and to bring down Morelos, which cost us any chance in the game. And then you get an own goal off McGregor's shoulder or whatever it was, and it was one of those scrappy 1-0 victories that you can file next to. Oh God! Remember that game at Celtic Park where somebody was it Laudrup? We were all over them, and then Laudrup just burst up the park, and he hit a shot, and it went in off somebody in the line off the into the net. I can't. God, it's a long time ago. I'm really usually good with things like that, but I tend to blank out the horror shows and remember the good times. But yeah, I mean, it was a horrible game, and a lot of people were kind of done with him at that point, and then they were done with him again after Midtjylland, where it was just sheer stupidity by doing that. That's just surely Postecoglou's had a word with him and been like, "Don't lose the rag. You're 30 years old. You're a seasoned professional. You've got to set an example to these guys that are 20, 21, 22, and they're looking up to you. And apparently, by all accounts, he is a popular figure in the dressing room, so people do look up to him. So you don't want to be looking up to a guy who loses the rag and costs the team a player in a crucial game. Yeah, I'm happy with that, and I'm pleased for him because he obviously he's come up against it. He's had a lot of criticism. A lot of people haven't been on board with him, and then you're seeing sort of tweets now. I know Twitter's not a great barometer of things, given what I was saying about Starfield, but I've seen a lot of positivity towards Beaton on Twitter. People sort of putting their hands up and going, well, I think E-Tim's call him the Bethlehem Busquets, which is probably tongue in cheek, but it was E-Tim's as well had a go at Starfield last night. I had to reply and say I respectfully disagree. I mean, I love that E-Tim's listening to the podcast. But everybody's got their opinions, and it's strange how some people say things differently and see things differently.
Well, the big thing for me is if someone's got a different take on it, JP, I like to find how they've come to that conclusion, and then you start reconsidering sometimes the opinion that you've got, and that's the beauty of the debate. But one last point, I mean, what a turnaround it will be to go from that finger pointing sending off against Midtjylland at the beginning of the season in our Champions League qualifier to leading the team out against Rangers. I mean, that's tremendous, and it's down to the guy's character as well. He's never seemed to be one of the guys that's throwing a hissy fit or because he's not getting a game, because he's been in and out the side for several seasons.
I think using things like that happened to him at Ibrox can help a player. I mean, I have no idea. I've never played football at any serious level. Full Beth under 18 seems a long time ago. But I would imagine that if I have a rubbish game at Sevens on a Tuesday, the following week I'm like, right, I need to play better this week because I had a stinker last week and missed sitters and I lost the rag and that's what I'll do the following week. But he'll have that memory of Ibrox and how bad he felt at that time, and you use that as fuel for your next bite at it. And if he gets a bite at it as captain, I'm still not entirely sure McGregor's not going to be there. I know that sounds insane, but the fact that he was there at Tynecastle last night makes me think that all was not lost. And Ange Postecoglou obviously playing his cards very close to his chest as usual. But the fact that he was at Tynecastle, yes, his face looked. Have you seen the picture?
I know. It was bruised. It was puffy. It was. I know.
Oh man, I've had an ankle like that before, and it goes all shades of purple and yellow, and it's horrible. But I don't know. Time will tell. We'll wait and see. I mean, but if Beaton does get the nod, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's the thing, and people are commenting around about the point that was made about Taylor. You said that maybe that's the area of the park that you would like to strengthen. I just think we're in a really difficult position at the moment, whereby we're looking at the amount of left backs we actually have, and it'll probably stay like that until one of them gets out the door. And I think everybody realises Bolingoli is that player. We need to get him off the wage bill. We need to move him on, probably before we would go out back into the transfer market. But what I'm confident of is that when we do that, and this was mentioned last night, right? So Taylor at this moment in time has the jersey. When we go into the transfer market, when the time's right to do that, it'll be an upgrade, JP. We will go out. I don't think, if Bolingoli leaves, we'll run with Scales and Taylor. I don't think that will be the case. Montgomery's obviously gone out on loan as well. I think it will be announced, but he's on his way to Kilmarnock, isn't he, Adam Montgomery? So we've got I think we've got the example of Juranovic on the right-hand side, where we've got a very able deputy in Ralston, but when we go into the transfer market, we'll be looking for more quality. And that will come, but I just think we're in a predicament at the moment. We don't want to be too heavy on the left backs. Now, Giakoumakis has been the subject of much discussion since the Alloa game. Actually, by the way, before I go on to Giakoumakis, the game against Alloa, like you said, not a vintage performance, but see, when you think back to the centenary season and you think about the glorious day at Hampden and the sun, and we beat Dundee United, last minute goals against Hearts, and winning at Ibrox and winning the league against Dundee, you never think about the Scottish Cup game against Stranraer, right, where we beat them 1-0 at home at Celtic Park. We beat them 1-0, and Pat Bonner saved a penalty. So really? you never think about that game. It's just one of the footnotes, right? And you just, and I think Alloa was going to be a bit like that as well.
The Dunfermline game that we went to extra time. Remember, it was threatened to end the unbeaten run under Brendan. Celtic Park went to extra time against Dunfermline. That team should not have been going to extra time against Dunfermline, but it happens sometimes. They're not robots and they're not perfect, and the conditions determine how football matches go sometimes. And I think most people would accept that, I would hope.
Yeah, but another point about that game you mentioned about when Alloa came to Celtic Park, it was 2-0. Craig Gordon almost got sent off for wiping out Greg Spence. Yeah. Jack Ross was the manager of Alloa, and then the following season, one of the hardest tasks we had was to knock St Mirren, who were also in the second tier, out of the cup. And St Mirren took the lead, and we beat them, I think, 2-1. And Jack Ross was the manager of St Mirren as well. But it looks as though he's maybe on his way to Queen's Park, perhaps. Anyway, Giakoumakis, 27 years of age. He's a Greek internationalist, and £2.25 million we paid VVV Venlo 5 months ago. Now, he scored 10 or more goals on 2 occasions in his senior football career, and he has had 10 seasons playing in Greece, Poland, and the Netherlands. So, a lot of people, he's had 10 senior seasons, yeah.
What age is he?
He's 27. So he's had 10 seasons behind. This is his 11th season in senior football. But he's now scored 2 and 2. And I think that he's started to show enough to suggest that going into a game, he's a better option than Joey Dawson at this moment in time. And that's not a slight on Joey, because he wasn't ready, but he came in and he played pretty well. But you don't want to be going into these games where Joey Dawson is your backup to Kyogo. You don't want to be going into the games when Owen Moffat has to start against St Mirren away from home, because it can sometimes damage the confidence of that player. I thought Dawson done pretty well, by the way. But you want to go into this game against Dundee United and then against Rangers with someone that has got a wee bit more confidence than he maybe had a couple of weeks back. I wasn't judging him on that penalty miss, by the way. To be honest with you, I wasn't judging him on that. And I wasn't judging him on his performances leading up to the game against Alloa. I was simply looking at that game against Alloa because I had commented that when he came on for 20, 30 minutes in Europe, I thought he was holding the ball up really well, JP.
Yeah.
He was doing all that side of the game really, really well. But he is really the only striker that we have. So I'm going to ask you the same question going into the games against United and Rangers. I'm not going to say you're happy because you'd much rather have Kyogo and you'd much rather have Maeda at your disposal. But after getting back on the score sheet again last night, what's your thoughts on Giakoumakis going into the next two games?
To be honest, the most important thing for me in that game against Rangers and on Saturday is the midfield and the wing play, because if they play as good as they should and can, then I'm not really that concerned about who's up top, because they make the opportunities for a striker, and even if you're not like a top level striker, and I don't think Giakoumakis is, otherwise we wouldn't have him. I think he showed last night. You give him a decent ball, he'll make use of it. I don't think he's the type of guy that will make goals for himself, but if there's quality provided to him, he'll get on the end of it because he's hungry for goals. You could tell that from his interview after the game. He was genuinely kind of like, right, I've got to go in a big game. I know I can do it now here. And I think once you've got that kind of monkey off your back, so to speak, it kind of starts to fall into place a bit. A club like especially the size of Celtic, with the expectation levels and everything else. I don't know. I said last week I didn't know how big a crowd Maeda would have played to in Yokohama Marinos, and somebody commented on the Twitter post saying they play to 70,000 people. I was like, okay, right, fair enough. I didn't know that, so I don't know how big a stadium VVV Venlo is in Holland. So again, somebody can come in and tell me how big their stadium is, but it's certainly, you'll never have had the pressure of playing in front of our support in our stadium. So I think the more goals he can get, if he can get another one on Saturday, then that's what, 3-3. That's a great strike rate to be going into any game, against any opposition. And like I said, the midfield for me, if the midfield's firing, then we can do damage, and then if Giakoumakis can take an opportunity from there, then great. But yeah, I'm pleased. We've seen so many of these strikers come and go at Celtic that you're obviously going to be sceptical. Everybody has been about Giakoumakis. There's the same up until Alloa. There was the same a bit divide about similar to Starfelt, in that there was people writing him off online. And then there's people sort of putting pictures up going, I believe in this guy and all this sort of stuff. Like before Alloa, like talking about Giakoumakis. And, I think it's just one of those ones where, time will tell over the next couple of months what sort of contribution Giakoumakis will make in the bigger picture, because you want it to be the case that he holds on to that first team jersey and Maeda and Kyogo come back and can't get it off him. I mean, what a position that would be. Because I don't think Postecoglou's the type of guy that would just like bomb him out if he's been scoring goals in their absence, and then just be like, oh well, they're back now. You could sit on the bench again, because we still paid decent money for him, and it's not as if he's, I would be happy with that if that was the case. I mean, I think most people would. I mean, it would be a bit mental because how good Kyogo and Maeda, well, definitely Kyogo, potentially Maeda are. What a situation that would be, but we'll wait and see.
I think example of Ralston. Ralston played so well, he kept the jersey, even though you knew that Juranovic had been signed as a first choice right back, and it took Juranovic a while to actually get the jersey back. He undoubtedly is now the first choice right back. But you mentioned earlier on, and it's almost like a personal crusade against the poor tackling against Celtic players, and people saying, oh, you're paranoid, blah blah blah. I'm talking about Celtic players because I watch Celtic. JP. I don't watch Motherwell or Dundee United or St Johnstone, so I can't give you examples of similar tackles against other teams' players because we watch Celtic. But last night, there was a number of them, and I'm going to pinpoint a few, but you had Mackay on Hatate, Halkett on Giakoumakis, Boyce on Abada, Devlin on Jota, and Herring on Taylor. And that was the worst of the bunch, I think, because he did the old Naismith thing that Naismith did against Johnny Hayes. But you're looking at that, and it is not being managed by the officials. And we've gone on about this time and time again. And I wonder if a precedent has been set, because we called it out on day one at Tynecastle with the Halliday tackle on McGregor. There was a few others that night as well. We called out that night. It's still happening all these months later. We've already seen the impact of that, i.e. Gucci, McGregor, some say that wasn't as bad a tackle and it was very unlucky, etc. I thought it was certainly reckless just to be putting your body in there without any attempt to get the ball. And it's almost as if, and as I say, I qualify this by saying I don't watch Motherwell, St Johnstone or Dundee United, so I can't comment on other teams unless they're playing Celtic. But it's almost as if it's fair game. There's a Celtic player, kick him, scrape your studs down the back of his calf, and they just don't get punished for it enough for me, JP.
Well, I think the manager's comments said it all, didn't they? I mean, when he said, I told them not to, I think it was 20 Minute Tim's asked the question about the protection in the press conference the other day, and he said, I just said to them not to go in on tackles because I was concerned for their well-being, not maybe because people were being malicious, but they were being reckless. And being reckless is just as bad as being malicious because you're endangering an opponent. I mean, that tackle from Niang was absolutely ridiculous.
Horrendous, mate.
No need to make that level of tackle at that stage in the game. And everyone's like, oh yeah, it only looks worse because it's slowed down. It wasn't like two players running for the ball at full pelt, when we make that kind of collision at speed. It was just a needless, brutal, over-the-top challenge that you saw his ankle go like that. I mean, nobody's ankle should be going like that in a game. Do you know what I mean? That's just not on. And folk can say, sour grapes or whatever, or boo-hoo or dry your eyes or whatever, but I'm sorry, but if that was happening if you're another supporter of another team and you're watching this and you go, oh, come on, it wasn't that. If that happens to one of your players and he's out for a number of weeks or months, don't think you'd be happy about it. So
No. Welcome to Scottish football. There's a bag of frozen peas. Go and sit in the dugout. And if there's a wee bit more weight on Hatate's foot, because you actually see his knee jars a wee bit. If there's a wee bit more weight, it could even have damaged his ligaments in his knee, and then you're looking at an even bigger issue. It is definitely something that Anne just called it out, and I find that interesting. But it's not paranoia. I mean, there's too many examples. Anne just called it out. But then you're watching Robbie Nielsen last night getting his knickers in a twist because a guy's got cramp. You're going to get the time at the end of the game to make up on it. He's no time wasting, and he's going to rid you of a chance to come back. Listen, there's so much more to talk about, JP, but as always, we go on various tangents, etc. But we can't go through this show without talking about two other matters. The first one being that jersey over your right shoulder, which has been a feature over your appearances on Acsom for some time. The jersey over your right shoulder. But this time round, you've chosen it, obviously, in memory and as a tribute to Wim Jansen. How many guys have come to Celtic in any capacity for 1 year and left such an impression as Wim Jansen did?
Well, not in my lifetime anyway. I mean, I did have a lot of time for Joseph Venglos as well, but Joseph Venglos didn't win anything. And unfortunately, as Ange Postecoglou said, as people pass through a club, you want to leave a mark. And as a 17, 18-year-old maniac Celtic fan, Wim Jansen left his mark on me, an indelible mark, and I genuinely was sad, and I actually can feel myself getting a bit upset talking about it because I've not spoken about it to that many people. I met my mate Michael last night before the game, and it was just sort of me and Michael met first year at uni. That was that season, 97, 98, and the memories that he gave us. I mean, the League Cup final for a start. I didn't get a ticket for that. I was in Glasgow that day, hoping against hope for a ticket, but I couldn't get one. So I ended up watching the Hoops Bar, and Michael came back to the Hoops Bar afterwards, and I remember the atmosphere in the Hoops Bar that night, and it was absolutely unbelievable. The place was bouncing because it was like we'd won something, but we'd won it in style, and we'd won it emphatically. You know, like the last time we'd won a trophy was 1-0 2 years before that. Big Pierre, a dull game. It was just more relief rather than joy. And it was joy, and it was like, wait a minute, we can maybe do this season. Like winning that League Cup was like a kind of,
it was huge.
It was like a beacon that meant that it was a possibility. And
Mm-hmm.
you looked at the way that he used players that had been there previously, like Simon Donnelly. You know, I mean, that's just the first person that goes to my head. Jackie Mack. You know,
Jackie was massive that season. JK, massive.
Yeah. I mean, those guys really stepped up for him, and like players are stepping up for Postecoglou now, you put it down to the manager. And you read quotes recently about Johan Cruyff saying he's one of 4 people I'd listened to talking about football, Wim Jansen, and then tributes from Van Persie and even Giovanni van Bronckhorst as well. You know, he was such a highly respected guy, and then to lead us over the line the way that he did, it was nervy in the last day. I wasn't there. I was in my bed, ill, as I've told that story before. I didn't make the game, and I'll regret it forever. But I'd celebrated it the week before at Ibrox anyway, because I was in the Kilmarnock end when Ali Mitchell scored that goal. That's another story. But no, Wim Jansen was huge person for Celtic. I wish he'd been about in Scotland a bit more in recent years, you know, maybe at Celtic Park, that I could have got the opportunity to do a Declan and shake his hand and say thank you for what you've done, because I've had the opportunity to do that to Neil Lennon, to Martin O'Neill, and to Gordon Strachan, and Brendan Rodgers actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't. I never got the chance to say thank you to Wim Jansen, and I was really heartened to see the pictures on Twitter of people saying that they'd met him in. I think it was a game in Luxembourg or something like that, and they met him in the square, and apparently sat talking to like a bunch of Celtic fans for ages in the square. And there's all these like nice stories that appear after someone passes away, and as sad as it is, you find out a bit more about them, about the personal side of them. And I got that top way back in the late 90s, obviously, because it was the top that Larson had, I think, worn before he came to Celtic, and I got it from the fabled inn shops in Falkirk, which was at the back of the Howgate Centre, where you got like last season's European tops, and it was just like an absolute mecca for wee mad football fans like me. And I would go and fill my boots every now and then when I'd get a paycheck in from the Turficking Inn, and I've still got a number of those strips. I've sold a few of them on eBay. The ones that didn't, I had a PSG one with the Opal as a sponsor, and
Mm-hmm.
PSG mean absolutely nothing to me as a football club. I don't really even see them as a real football club at the moment, given their backing and such like. But I sold one of their tops online on eBay for about 80 quid. It was like the 94-95 season PSG top, the one that Loco wore, and probably the one that they wore.
Djurkaev and Paul Le Guin played that night as well.
But yeah, I got the final top. So I've always kind of wanted to go to the Keep Stadium in Holland to see Feyenoord, and certainly they're everything that Ajax aren't. You know, I mean, I've not heard any. Maybe there are tales about Feyenoord fans being out of order, but as long as they're not racist or fascist, then that's all right with me. But yeah, I'd love to go and see them, and obviously there's the connection because of the 70 final as well. And it was nice seeing the pictures of him in the Feyenoord strip. I'd not really seen a lot of pictures of him. There was a picture shared against a really good one where I think he's with Bobby Murdoch in the like a black and white picture. But yeah, amazing guy, amazing contribution to Celtic's history. And you know, as Tommy Burns said, you know, he's there and he always will be there. You know, like he's that image of him on the shoulders at Celtic Park of the players, you know, is iconic. And you know, the people will be talking about that in 30, 40, 50, 100 years time. You know, it's an amazing thing to do. Leave a mark at a football club as big as that, because it was so big that season, as we all know.
And he left us with Henrik Larsson as well.
Well, I mean, talk about drip feeding of success. You know, like to have that guy do what he did after that season. I mean, he was great that season. He went on to be, you know, biblical in the seasons after, you know, under Martin O'Neill, and when he really showed what he could do. And I'm sure Janssen must have been extremely proud to see him do that for Celtic and then go on and do it and win the big cup at Barcelona, you know. So,
oh, definitely. Yeah. No, lovely tribute, JP, and I'm sure more will be said about Wim Janssen in the weeks and the years to come, in actual fact. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've run over. We've not even spoke about music. We'll save that for next week. There was something I was going to mention.
Working my first gig back at King Tut's tonight, so back in the saddle. Way to Tynecastle last night, at home to King Tut's tonight. And
who's playing tonight?
A band called Dancing on Tables.
Dunfermline band, yep.
Yeah. Still tickets available if anybody wants to come. There will be tickets on the door. And tomorrow night's sold out. I'm working tomorrow night, and then Celtic Park on Saturday. So nice wee run of things to happen in my life, as opposed to sitting about doing nothing, which I have done most of this month.
It's great to hear, mate. It's great to hear. And that wasn't a setup, but Dancing on Tables did do an unplugged session on our channel. So get onto YouTube, subscribe, watch Dancing on Tables live. Lovely guys from Dunfermline. And search a wee bit deeper, because we did do an interview with a Feyenoord fan called Ellen Mannins around about the time of their 50th anniversary of beating Celtic in the European Cup. And she speaks fondly of Wim Janssen. She also talks about the fan base, the culture of the fans, JP, so you weren't far wrong. They're the working class club. They're not the elitist club, and they don't like Ajax. So have a wee listen to Ellen Mannins with A Celtic State of Mind, and check out Dancing on Tables, and get subscribing on the YouTube channel. Absolutely brilliant response today. Thanks everybody for getting involved. 1,100 strong. Giakoumakis, yes, we know he played well last night, and we're all delighted that he played well. And I said he was rotten against Alloa. Apologies. He's great, and I hope he scores against Dundee United, like you say, to set us up for the game on Wednesday night. Loads to look forward to. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to JP Mason for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.